Thanks for joining, everyone. We're delighted to bring you this panel. I'm Lawrence Crowther. I work for Snyk. I'm the head of solutions engineering. We have three esteemed gentlemen with me here today. On the left here, we have Dipin Thomas, who's the engineering manager at Shopback. We have Metarsit at the end there, who's the engineering manager at Coinhako. And we have Pablo Reyes, who's the head of AppSec, or AppSec lead at Woolworths in Australia, which is a large retail company. I'll let the gentlemen introduce themselves in a minute, but I want to just spend a bit of time on the topic. I think it's quite interesting. The role of leadership in DevSecOps programs or adoption across the business, because it's not just about the tooling and the technology, it's probably most importantly about culture. And this is really where leadership can lean in and drive the culture and make it part of the DNA across the business so that your DevSecOps programs and your AppSec programs are successful, have successful outcomes. They need to be measuring the improvements over time so that we see good feedback to the team so they get encouraged to actually do more. So we're going to spend a bit of time here talking about it. Each of the respective leaders here on stage have a different perspective. We have two engineering managers and an AppSec lead, so good contrasting views. So it should make for a sort of robust conversation. All right, so let's dive in. I'm going to ask the three guests the first question, and they're going to introduce themselves as well. So the first question is, in their experience, how do they see leadership playing a role in their DevSecOps program? So why don't we start with you, Dipin, introduce yourself, and we take it from there.
Hey folks, I'm Dipin, engineering manager at Shopback, DevOps. So I'm one of the key person to make sure that all the DevSecOps practices are in place. And coming to the question, from the leadership perspective, right, the main idea is to setting the actual goal that as an organization, you make sure that this is important for us, and setting up progressive targets within the organization. It's impossible to achieve 100% security on day one. Instead, it has to be like quarter by quarter gradual growth, which everyone can adopt. So that is one of the key thing of leadership.
Do you want to tell the audience a bit about Shopback, if they're not familiar with it?
Yeah, so Shopback is an affiliated marketing company where we give cashbacks, and the tagline is small wins. So every day you spend in 10 markets in Asia, you'll be getting 5% to 10% cash back. So over the time, you'll accumulate.
Great. Let's go to you, Pablo. Your view on leadership in DevSecOps within Woolworths.
Yeah, so my name is Pablo, and I've been on cyber for a very long time. And I think the leadership, the participation of the leadership is very important. As you open saying, it's a cultural thing. So most of the times with an AppSec program or a DevOps program, we focus on tools, we focus on scripting, automation, and we forget the most important part, which is the people, the culture. So something that is very important is guaranteeing that the support from the leaders, from the leader management. So they need to show their commitment and sort of empower the culture of the adoption of these kind of practices. So I'd say the leadership part in a program like this, I think, is fundamental.
Great. Same question to you, Metarsit.
Cool. My name is Metarsit. I'm an engineering manager in Coinhako. Coinhako is a regulated crypto platform in Singapore. My team covers trading, retail, as well as institution. But to the questions, to me, I feel like leadership has to be an agent of change. They should being able to foster the culture that Pablo just mentioned earlier. DevSecOps is actually, to me, like a living process, right? Like it and also an iterative one where like you improve it over time. Not just on that iterative approach, but also actually helping to prioritize a bunch of things. For example, resources. We're not talking only just like people, but tooling, time, as well as technology, because all of this actually enable people. Hiring the right talent, invest in the right initiative, putting in the right tool, having everyone able to access to them and put them into that workflow. I think that will enable this a lot.
Just extending on that, can you describe how your leadership actually shows up within the team? Do they attend some of your stand-ups or your meetings each week to sort of add their perspective?
Sorry?
It's a bit hard to hear.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear us up the back okay? Yeah. So I asked, can you share some perspective how your leadership actually shows up in the organization? As in, do they come to the stand-ups now and then? Do they come to the weekly meetings and sort of just check in on what's going on, but also take feedback?
Right. So basically, we I don't think everyone can show up on all stand-up. That's for sure. But then we have like a weekly meeting to review what initiative we are looking at, how do we solving them, how to basically solve this problem over time, as well as learning from them. These metrics are actually very, very useful for us to analyze and potentially look at this culture of continuous improvement, using what we learn. Maybe we make certain mistake, put it back. I want to echo that, like what I said, as a living process, right? You go back, make sure it's better. Yeah, hopefully we solve most of the problem that we see.
You spoke about metrics. I think that's a good segue. It's often sort of given as a silver bullet to make sure you're measuring the right things, but often it's very difficult to sort of quantify if the team is actually improving and getting better in terms of security. So next question to you, Dipin, is how does your team measure success? How do you present that back to the leadership?
So the measure of success for us is basically the adoption rate. So what management wants to see is that, okay, we buy in new process, new tools. What is the adoption rate? And one of the key factor is the customers, that is developers, are they happy with it? So in any DevSecOps implementation, it is developers who actually kind of, who are champions as well as who can drop the ball. So when it comes to metrics, make sure the adoption is good. And once the adoption is there, you have to make sure that the success is celebrated. Like if somebody finds up something good, make sure it is known. Because it's much easier to say, oh, this is not working, but as a leadership, it's very important for us to celebrate success. That's one of the key measures of
And obviously, Pablo, Woolworths is a giant organization compared to the other companies that Dipin and Metarsit represent. How is success measured in such a large organization like Woolworths?
Well, I think something that we notice is people I'd say in the high hierarchy, they love dashboards. So an easy way to compare against maybe month after month. So something that we realize is a graphical representation of our metrics is important. So the metrics that we use, for example, it's the time to build, how much it takes to make a build, how frequently are we building, and what's the failure factor, how our building pipelines are failing. So those are just a few of the most important ones. We put them all together on different dashboards and we show it. So another important one is the frequency of how frequently we are deploying. But another one is if there is a mistake, how much time does it take us to recover or to put it back to how it was. So those are kind of the main metrics that we use in a graphical way.
Gotcha. If you have any questions for the members up here, please put up your hand. We want to make this interactive. But yeah, same question to you, Metarsit. How do you measure success?
Right. I think most organizations probably do more or less the same. We all have that dashboard that we monitor and analyze. I would say that those metrics are pretty much the same. Vulnerability, security hotspot, time you take to respond to this problem. I think, but what I want to echo is actually looking at this and analyze them and actually study and understand actually where are we lacking as an organization. Is it, are we actually behind in terms of responding to all these security vulnerabilities? And if so, how do we fix them? So again, back to the iterative process of like, hey, we are behind on this. How can we get there? Let's improve it. Let's improve it together as an organization.
I guess one of the key things is what metrics or measurements does the CISO care about, and the wider business to that matter? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Because I think it varies organization to organization.
So for us, it is basically the number of vulnerabilities we have and how fast we were able to patch it. That's where the implementation comes into picture. From the time a vulnerability is found, how long does it take to close it out? And the faster, that means the tool and processes is much good. As well as, it's not just the tools in place, the process as well as people is also important. We find something, but people have to go and fix it. And making sure that we have the right tools in place, that's where the leadership comes in.
Great. Any comments there?
I think an important one for a CISO is risk reduction. So, and number of vulnerabilities is an important one from the time it's identified to the time it's fixed. So, how much time it takes to fix an issue, a vulnerability that we find.
Remediation.
Yeah, that's right. Important one.
Yeah, I think we don't speak enough of it though, but like false positive metrics, those are actually very, very important to look at because these are actually what developers and security engineers spend their time on. Reducing them technically free them up to look at some other problem. So I think those metrics just don't get spoken about enough. Yeah,
it's interesting because a lot of people sort of quantify it by the number of vulnerabilities that have been fixed. But at the end of the day, each vulnerability is not equal, right? Because you've got obviously super critical ones, you've got low ones, but you have to sort of slice it and dice it, which is how you're actually improving over time. And I think the mean time to remediation is a good one because that's what you want. You want how quick the developers actually respond to actually fixing the issues. And this is both culture and technology, right? Does the technology do a lot of the heavy lifting and provide enough context for developers to fix? And is the processes in place that allows that sort of freedom for developers to easily sort of fix something and move on to the next thing?
Yeah, that's right.
So another question is sort of a segue to that to you, Dipin, is how do you communicate with other stakeholders? So you're an engineering manager.
Yes.
How do you work best with the security team and vice versa? Like how do you bridge that gap?
So this is a really interesting question. So communication, I think it should be based on the target audience. For example, let's start with CISO. CISO wants to know, okay, the type of vulnerabilities we are finding, what is the time in which we are fixing it, give them nice dashboards, and make sure that the important critical stuff is being patched, and it is also getting them in confidence that this is not so critical, so it's fine, we'll resolve it faster. That's for CISOs. The same thing happens to management as well. We have to show that how much the adoption rate, as I mentioned before, as well as how developers are loving it. So we internally have a process wherein we take feedbacks and send it to our management as well as part of communication to making sure that we are on the right track to the management. And when it comes to developers, it's a different crowd altogether. So we have to give them the benefit of doing this. That is the main motivation. So summarizing is communicate based on the target audience and is work in best interest of them. That's the key of success.
Yeah, and Pablo, obviously you're on the security side, the AppSec side, not the engineering side. So a good question for you is, how do you make sure that there's good coverage across your software development lifecycle in terms of scans, number of scans, and I guess integration points along the SDLC to make sure you've got almost 100% coverage? You have to work with the engineering team to obviously implement that, but can you share some experiences there?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's based on my experience. As an example, we have hundreds of building pipelines, hundreds. And something that I noticed in a successful program is you start small, you pick one end to end, and show the value. So if you try to do this in hundreds of building pipelines, this is not going to work. So you start with one end to end and show the value. And how do we guarantee that we are covering the whole thing? It's working very close with engineering teams. So, for example, people in the DevOps space, we work very close, and we just talking about that gap. We work in their shoes, and we invite them to understand why a vulnerability is important, for example. So it's a shared model where security is not just part of my team, but it's the whole organization, and it works very well when you invite them. You put in their hands the tools that we use to measure or to identify vulnerabilities. That's very important, so that they don't feel like, oh, this is just a tool for the security team. No, this is a tool that even you can use. So I think that's a very, very important one.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Matasa, similar question I asked Dipin, like how do you ensure the collaboration between dev and sec?
Right. So I will go back to culture. Right. There's many culture we're talking about here, but for this one particularly, it would be around collaboration as well as like shared responsibility. I think everyone has heard this. Like security is everyone's responsibility. I think once you can foster that kind of culture, like it really introduces like an end-to-end to your development process. It means that your security tools are always integrated end-to-end. And this is wonderful in my opinion, because then from my personal experience, I believe many people have heard horror stories, but like security team coming with the big binders of vulnerabilities and just like, yep, you're gonna fix this 1,000 vulnerabilities. But by doing this like collaboration, everyone is taking part of them, reduces this a lot, and then close down the feedback loop. So no vulnerability will be overlooked or neglected going forward. I think that's my take.
You raised something interesting there. So it's not easy, and there are challenges. So I think that's why a lot of you showed up today, is to hear what are the challenges and how you overcome them, right? So I think it would be interesting to hear from you, Dipin, around what challenges you had implementing DevSecOps culture and how did you overcome them, and sort of what's left to do.
It's a big question. It's a big question, definitely. It's a never-ending thing. So what did we do was effective communication, make sure that everyone is on board. That's the important thing. So then after that, when we roll out tools, right, we have to make sure that it's smooth. We don't want our customers, developers fighting against the tool. It should help them. So as an implementer, as an advocate of DevSecOps within the organization, it's important for us to make sure that the tool doesn't fight them. It is also make sure that we have the right practices. We are able to give feedback to the developers faster and making sure that things are all good. What else? That's what I can think of.
Any other comments that you want to share? Challenges?
Important one is historically people in cybersecurity, people that come from the security background, we take security like auditors. We think like, oh, this is my checklist, and this is what my compliance checklist says, and you have to do it. And maybe that worked 20 years ago, possibly 10 years ago, but these days that doesn't work like that. So maybe just to break, maybe that's maybe to make the adoption easier. It's just work collaboratively with your developers. Don't be an auditor, but help them be an enabler. So help them to find the vulnerabilities in their code that they, for example, they own. It's not your code. So the security team needs to be an enabler rather than an auditor. I think that's important for me.
Yeah, actually a good question for you, Pablo, coming from the AppSec side, is around how do you manage or balance speed versus compliance, right? Because obviously you're worried about compliance and risk. The developers want to go fast. So how do you meet in the middle?
Yeah, that's a very good one. Yeah, that's a very good one. And I would say it is not science, it's more like an art. And it's difficult to give you a formula for this to work. But something that works very well, it's walking a strategy where walking in the shoes of the other team. So I want to understand you as a developer, why you cannot maybe close all the vulnerabilities. And I invite you so that you understand why security for me is important. So I think something that I noticed on the most successful AppSec programs that I've seen is where you change the perception of, I think we all know that security is important. We all have awareness of security. So in my opinion, what I've seen is a successful program is when you shift from awareness, in this case, to adoption, to adopting practices. So I'd say it's very important that you share collaboration between the different teams and walk in the shoes of the other team.
Do you both agree with that, his statement? Because you're coming from the engineering side and you want to go fast and break things, but do you want to do it in sort of within these guardrails?
Yeah, so I think I would like to add one more thing in the same line. So one of the major problems you get is security looks at, oh, there are 1,000 vulnerabilities. Okay, how do you fix it? And then developer says, there is no fix for it. What should I do? or you want me to just throw away everything. So it is very important you have right tools. Like for example, we use Snyk extensively, and it filters out things which can be fixed. That's a very good plus for developers as well as security team. So the tool will make sure that it catches when immediately when the fix is available. Else, don't stop the developers. So everyone is happy. Like there is a fix, I'm stopped. I can do it. If there is no fix, okay, we'll look into it later. So that's very important.
And sort of coming back to the topic around leadership, Metarsit, what skills do you think a good leader needs in this new world of DevSecOps and agility?
I have to be a strategic thinker. I think that's very, very important. Balancing between like security initiative and the company objective are always the most difficult. And I believe nobody has to choose first delivery or security at all. So being able to prioritize security vulnerabilities of what to fix now, what to fix later, and then assign the right resources effectively, of course, and then drive this continuous improvement. Over time, we'll pay them down. Look at the metrics. Over time, your vulnerability goes hopefully to zero someday. But with that, it really changes how we drive that DevSecOps process. And to me, one more thing is also about adaptability. I think we are in the conference today. We'll have thousands of tools. Same thing. I think every day there will be new tools, new technology, new methodology to follow. Understanding them, open to them, bringing them into the organization and change how the DevSecOps process I think that will change a lot of things.
I think we're getting the signal to sort of wrap up here. So I guess could each of you sort of leave with the audience some best practices or tips for implementing a DevSecOps program?
Okay. So I think all of us know DevSecOps is not an easy battle to win. It's going to be very difficult, but make sure effective communication is very key. Second thing is iterative approach. Make sure that we are making improvement every day. And it is also important that all the stakeholders are happy. Give immediate feedbacks and be very reasonable. Expectations are kept and the thresholds are increased on a monthly basis. So the whole organization should agree that, okay, this quarter we're going to hit 70% of the compliance. Is it reasonable? Yes. Make sure that the leadership is also on board to make the right investment of time. That's important. So once we have all this, then I'm pretty sure it's going to be a good journey.
Something that I can suggest you is when you hire people in your DevSecOps program or in your teams, make sure part of the criteria of selection it's soft skills. We always think it has to be someone who's really good with the scripting, with automation, someone that is good with these different tools. But we forget an important one is we need soft skills. So people in those teams, they need to be very flexible. They need to be willing to accept failures. So especially when you are starting these programs, you're gonna fail a lot. So you need to have this kind of soft skills, communication, accepting working with people in other teams. So if you bring a security specialist, make sure accept working with people in the other teams and the other way around. So that would be my recommendation.
Cool. For me personally, I think it's the tools, picking the right tool to help you with the job. Right? End of the day, we want to do as little work as possible. How do we do that? Is adopting the right tool for the right problem we have. And personally, from experience, I think limiting the number of tools really, really help too. From security perspective, speaking, because if not, you're gonna have 5 different security tools fixing 5 same problem. So looking at the right tool, helping you with the right problem, I think that would take you next level.
The summary to sort of conclude here is picking the right tools, soft skills, and sort of having this growth mindset, right? I think that's probably nails it in a nutshell. But we're running out of time. I don't know if we have time for 1 or 2 questions, but we'll stay around if anyone has any questions. But thank you very much. Thanks for your attention. Appreciate it. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you.